Today, let's talk about sewing with rib knits and some tips to get you started. Welcome, I do sewing and DIY related content, and today we are talking about rib knits. Now, rib knits are interesting materials as they have this ribbed texture. So, the idea is that they have this texture that allows for stretch really from side to side, so not up to down, but the side to side is created through the knitting process. So, it's normally like one knit and one purl if you're familiar with knitting techniques. Sometimes it could be more. As you can see, we're using black fabric, and my cat has been here, so there's some white fur on it, but this gives it a really nice, comfortable, stretchy texture. What's really great about it also is it has a lot of recovery, meaning that it bounces back into shape. So because it does that, we do have to take into account some things when we're sewing with it. Now, rib knits can be fantastic for clothing, they can be fantastic for kids' clothes as well, so a lot of different uses, but we do want to be careful when we're sewing to make sure we have everything set up correctly. So if you're familiar with sewing with knits, a lot of this will be the same that would apply to those. But if you're just getting started with rib knits and want to have a deep dive, let's begin. So the first is, if you're using your sewing machine, you are going to want to use a walking foot. Now, a walking foot is going to allow it so that there's basically guides on the top as well as the bottom, so both of those fabrics that we're pushing through, to help with the stretch. If you don't have a walking foot, you could also try a knit foot. It will provide a similar effect. I do find that a walking foot can tend to be a little bit better, especially when working with very stretchy or kind of silky rib knits, but of course that is a personal preference. Now, never use a universal needle. You're going to want to use a ballpoint needle. A ballpoint needle is going to allow you not to snag your fabric. And when we're sewing with this, because it does have that unique texture and because of how knits are created, you want to be sure that that ballpoint needle allows you not to snag your material, and it will help you keep that nice stretch that you have, especially when we're pairing this then with a stretch stitch. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about stretch stitches when we go to our sewing machine, but before we get there, I do want to talk a little bit about that stretchiness and some of the best ways to prep your fabric. And one of those ways is to add interfacing or some sort of stabilizer, especially at the neck and shoulders. So you can actually get knit interfacing, and I would highly recommend having that on hand. In addition, you want to use probably quilting clips. I find that they do make it a little bit easier to keep your knit items in place, and sometimes, that stretch and that silkiness. So definitely want to have, while you can use pins, the quilting clips can help. So for the interfacing, a lot of the times this is something that you can add to the wrong side of your material. Sometimes it comes as wash away. This one is specifically fusible, so you would fuse it to your knit, but just items that you can have that will help kind of ease the burden of that stretch. So now let's go over to my sewing machine, and I'm going to put in my walking foot. So I have this on, and once you have your walking foot on, you can actually then begin the process of sewing, especially once you've switched out the needle. Now, for stretch stitches, you're going to want a lightning stitch or a zigzag stitch. That's something that will allow your fabric to still move and stretch when you are using it. So I'm going to go ahead and just take a little test stitch right here. And as you can see, that walking foot is moving from the top, and then the feet dogs are moving from the bottom, so to help not do any extra stretching on my material. And here's what that stitch looks like. So this is a lightning stitch. It does provide a little bit of stretch. You could definitely use a zigzag stitch if you wanted more. Now I'm going to do two pieces, so taking a seam, and I'm just going to do this on my fabric, and then I'm going to get started. Now for this, I'm not going to sew actually all the way down, just because I don't think we need to do that for you to be able to see what's happening here. But what you will notice is that once you actually get that whole seam in, so that we still have that stretch, and then if I fold this over, you still will be able to see that our fabric has come together very nicely, and we still have all that stretch that we needed. Now you can also use your serger. Honestly, I love the way that a serger looks, especially when it comes to really doing any sewing, but a serger will allow you to keep all of your stretch, which is a really nice feature of it. So you can see this is what the serger looks like. It looks so clean. I am using black thread on here, so it even makes it look a lot more hidden and professional. But now if I do the serger seam on the side to side edge where it has the most stretch, you can see I'm really able to keep almost all of that stretch, which is a great use. I hope that this helped you figure out how you would want to use rib knits. If it did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you want to see next.